Why nice guys don't get paid or laid with Dr. Robert Glover. Join me and my co-host Ben as we do the Insights version. This is the new version of the podcast. So what's going to happen is this. The original version that we did with Glover 2 years ago is going to play. The episode is gold. Timeless insights that he reveals in that. Straight after that, it's going to go into mine and Ben's insights that we've picked up over the last 2 years from coaching hundreds of men, but also just both of our personal growth journeys through going through nice guy syndromes. Enjoy the episode. And if you want to ask us a question, there's now a link below. You can click it in Spotify and Apple, ask us a question, and we'll answer it on the next episode. Cheers, guys.
Welcome to the Awaken Man podcast. Honestly, this is going to be an amazing one. I am so excited and honored to be joined by Peter Taylor today.
Lovely. I love it.
How many times have you pulled that on him?
I wasn't expecting that. I really wasn't expecting.
I'm honored I'm always honored to be joined by Pete, but honestly, the only person that could match the might of Mr. Taylor is Dr. Robert Glover. Robert, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on this podcast. It means a lot to both Pete and I and the men that listen into the Awaken Man podcast. I'm just going to, before we start the conversation, I just want to introduce Robert to those of you who don't know who he is. I don't know how you know, if you're in men's work, it's like not knowing who Alex Ferguson is if you watch football.
Who's he?
Yeah. So I started my men's journey when I was turning like 29, 30, and Robert's book was the first book that was given to me, and it helped me exponentially. It was just I was reading it thinking like, this guy just knows me so well, and it was about being a nice guy, and it's almost like I felt it was the book that every guy should get when they turn 30, has got that equation that being a nice guy somehow makes their life better. And it was one of the, I would say, the cornerstone pieces of information that I received that helped me massively change my life from the age of 30, rectifying my relationships, me in business. And Robert, just like, thank you so much for writing that. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for that that introduction. It's interesting. When I began men's work in my early mid-30s, like you, about all there was Iron John, which that was good. But we had the mythopoetic movement, and we could go out in the woods and hold the talking stick and say ho and beat a drum, which was all good. I mean, I did that, but there wasn't much else out there, or at least not that I could find. And so I'm just so excited. Now here we are in 2022, that there's programs like yours, Awaken Man, just so many great men's coaches, men's programs, men's books. I mean, it's just gratifying over the last 30 years just to see, the revolution that's occurring in men's work. So it excites me. Thank you for the invitation to be on your show again.
Yeah, that's the revolution of men's work, because I have to admit myself, right, up until I'd say actually 18 months ago when the Awaken Man program started, men's work wasn't even a word in my, it was I'd never used that word before, ever, and if I was to think of what men's work would be, I would think about a load of guys out in the woods bashing their drums and doing a bit of yoga. Right? That was what my perception of it. That's what it was. Right. So actually, for me, completely new term.
Pete just said about how he'd never even been introduced to men's work as a guy, and then all of a sudden he got involved in the Awaken Man, and all of a sudden he's hearing this word men's work. And I think that to begin the conversation, I think so many men don't know what men's work is, and it's almost like they go through this struggle of masculinity, problems in their relationships, all sorts of things, and but one of the reasons I wanted to start the Awaken Man project, because when I was going through those struggles and stresses, I didn't know where to turn. I didn't want therapy. I didn't know where to go to get help, but I didn't feel broken. So what's your experience with, obviously, because you've seen so many men probably turn and go to men's work. What was your experience of that?
Well, I'll tell you my experience, and then I'll give you my current day definition of men's work. So backing up for me, where I was at, I came into, well, my profession was I came to ministry early on, and then through marriage and family therapy. I got a PhD in marriage and family therapy at 29, so pretty young. That's where my education went. I was still working as a minister, and then made that transition to marriage therapy. Now, one thing that I've found is that most of the men's programs that I bump into don't come from, quote, a therapy background. They come, from yogic background, coaching background, consciousness background, lots of other things contributing. So I'd already, like I said, been a minister for a number of years, previous lifetime, was already working as a marriage and family therapist. And then I was in my second marriage, and, I was a nice guy. If you'd met me 35 years ago, I would have told you that. I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And I thought, why doesn't everybody live by that mantra of trying to be considerate of other people and generous and kind and conflict avoidant, all that kind of stuff. And about 2 years into my second marriage, my second wife said, everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, but you're not. You can be really hurtful. I'd rather be married to a jerk. At least I know a jerk's going to be mean to me all the time. You're nice, and then you're not. And she said, you need help. And she said, if you don't go get help, I'm leaving. And I didn't want to lose her. So I went and got help. And I thought, I don't know why I'm getting help. She's the one who's unhappy all the time, moody, never in a good mood, never wants to have sex anymore, angry. And I'm going to get help. And I landed in a 12-step group for sex addicts because she said, you're a sex addict. Well, I wanted to have sex with my wife. I guess that makes me a sex addict. Got there, found out I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict.
How much sex do you have to be a sex addict?
I'd
never thought about this before. Right, Google, let me Google this.
I don't think there's like a chart or a meter, but I knew I wasn't having any sex. On our honeymoon, my wife had announced, aren't you glad now that we're married, we don't have to pretend to like sex? I go, I wasn't pretending, So that's how it went from our honeymoon on. So we're about 2 years in. And so I went to the 12-step group for sex addicts, and it was great. Again, I found out I wasn't a sex addict, but it was a men's group. It was all guys. And these guys were hardcore. I mean, they were sex addicts. They were doing shit that, some were in trouble with the law, some were in trouble with the court. So, they were all in trouble one way or another. And for the first time in my life, I had a place where I just began to be me and reveal me. I grew up in fundamental Christian church, grew up with a critical father, grew up during angry feminism of the 60s and 70s. I kept everything about me under wraps. And so I'd go to these meetings. I go, what do I want to talk about today that I've never told anybody or that I don't really want to share, but I'm going to? And, it was liberating to just go and reveal me. And the only reaction I ever got was, thank you for sharing, Robert. And it was great. And about this time, I got in working with a therapist. And the very first session I had with this therapist, she taught me about boundaries. I was in my 30s, second marriage, PhD, never heard of boundaries. I didn't know what they were. I'm thinking, wow, I didn't know you could say no or stop, or I'm going to get off the phone now, or if you do that again, we're done. I didn't know you could do that, right? And then so I continued in therapy. A colleague of mine told me about a men's group he was in, led by a female therapist, around sexual shame. This woman had written several books around sexual shame. And that was where just the bulk of my nice guy recovery took place, was in that men's group. And by the way, shame is such a powerful place to do our deepest work, sex and shame. David Data talks about going through sex, David Snarch, Osho, Freud. Sex is just the portal to doing our deepest work. Jung would say the same thing. So that was so powerful to start doing, going into my deep work, just by starting with where my sexual shame was. And I had a bunch, most people do. So I noticed in my therapy work as a therapist, guys were coming to me, couples were coming to me, and so many of the men were saying, I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I treat her well. I treat her better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. I give her everything she wants. I try to make her happy. I bought her a Ford Explorer. It didn't have leather seats. It's never good enough. When's it going to be my turn? And why doesn't she ever want to have sex anymore? And I thought, these guys I can finish their sentences. They're just like me. So I started my first No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group over 25 years ago. Met every other Wednesday. I just started writing some stuff to just kind of give them when we met. I didn't really have an agenda. I was just writing what I was discovering. And over time, these guys, and usually their wives, were saying, Robert, you should write a book. You should go on Oprah. This could be a bestseller. There's a lot of men out there that need this. So over a period of about 6 or 7 years, I kept writing, and it took about 3 years to get it published, which was interesting because my agent shopped it to a lot of big publishers, and I talked to a lot of editors, and they said, Robert, we like your book. It's well written. It's a good book. But here's the but. Every one of them said the same thing. Our marketing department says men will not buy a self-help book. I said, you don't know the guys that I'm talking to. Well, so finally, I hustled, got a bunch of media exposure, finally got a book contract. And when the book came out in print, 2003, my publisher sent me on a book tour around the U.S. and did a lot of TV interviews, newspaper interviews, radio interviews. And the thing that guys or the interviewers would most ask me is, Robert, do you see a worldwide men's movement coming? And I said, no, really for a couple of reasons. One is I didn't think there was one unifying cause that would bring men together. And I said, I usually didn't say the second part. Second part is I think feminism succeeded to the degree that it did because of men, uh, whether it be governors, state legislatures, university presidents said, oh, we do need women do need equal pay for equal job and equal treatment and equal opportunity. So I think men were the reason that first wave, second wave feminism succeeded. I didn't think women would get on board with a men's movement. In fact, I just read an article last night in a women's feminist thing attacking Jordan Peterson as just like this evil creature. And I'm thinking, no, women, the feminism is not going to help a men's movement. Anything around empowerment. In fact, I read another article, a book review of the Proud Boys, written by a feminist guy in the New York Times. And basically talking about the Proud Boys, and I've seen other articles about this. They want to weave it into all men's work. Like all men's work is coming out of this nefarious thing of men being disempowered, and they're going to claim their power back. And so I was right about that part. Probably the women's movement was not going to help a men's movement. But what I didn't get right is that men need something. Whether they know it or not, they're looking for something. And like you were saying, Ben, you didn't know where to look. I didn't either. Like I said, I ended up in a 12-step group for sex addicts. So we're looking for something. We don't know necessarily where to look. But luckily now, with the internet, with the breadth of information and resources, men go looking. Now, they end up in men's work, and really what I think they're looking for is tribe and initiation. And they find it in many ways. I mean, maybe it's through a 12-step group. They get sober and they go find a group and they start gravitating towards the groups that are all men. Maybe it's they go, join a dojo and they learn martial arts or Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Maybe it's a divorce group through their church when they're going through a difficult time. Maybe it's a pickup boot camp. Maybe it's more of the consciousness yogic version of men's work, more of the David Data lineage. Maybe it's even kind of radical, nationalism. So men are looking for something. We need men. We need connection. We need direction. And again, we need that masculine initiation that teaches us how to deal with the difficult world, the scary world, the painful world of the masculine. Most of us have never had that. Most of us, I call it, we're hanging out in the nursery of instant gratification, no real challenge, and kind of being mama's boys, hanging out, trying to get the approval of women. And that's not going to take us where we want to go. So that's kind of my picture, and I'm excited about this. That whether a guy does go join a Brazilian jiu-jitsu group, goes to a pickup boot camp, goes through a consciousness trek journey out in the wilderness. However we do it, the good news is there's so much information out there, so many good books, so many good coaches. Sooner or later, once a guy starts moving in that direction, he seems to keep finding better and better tools to help him in that journey. People like you guys.
Yeah, actually, Pete nailed this when because we spent a year as a small group. Like Pete wasn't on board actually; he's still running his old business, and like we just made some offers to guys to connect on the internet, and we were like, okay, we're gonna have a men's group. We set it up, and then we were like trying to work out. These guys were getting great results in their life. They were making money. They were having more sex. They were having better relationships. And I was like, what do we actually do with these guys? Like, what is it fundamentally which we do? And it was Pete that was looking for the answer, and he found it like the word self-actualization. And I think that what's I'm seeing and experiencing every day as I'm facilitating in the group is guys that the only real way to self-actualize is in a group. Like you can't do it in a vacuum on your own. Like, and that's what I'm just seeing every single day. Is like guys coming together, and like even this morning, a guy shared about shouting at his kid, and all of the men jumped in and supported him, challenged him, and like that guy's getting 15 reference points to deal with his current situation, which he wouldn't have on his own. And that is for me is I'm still every day like pinch myself like, oh my gosh, I'm part of this group of men that's
Yeah.
doing that. And it's
I still pinch myself every day too, thinking, "Oh
yeah,
my gosh, I'm part of this."
yeah. And
And I agree with you. I say in No More Mr. Nice Guy early on and often, and I say it in every interview when interviewers say, well, what do you recommend for men? Say blah blah blah. I go, number one, don't do this alone. You didn't become a nice guy in social isolation. You're not going to recover in social isolation.
Mm.
Nowadays, most men want to do it alone.
Yeah,
We're
they don't want to ask
isolated.
for help. They never want to ask for help.
It's challenging for us men because it's like when when I messed up what I noticed. I'm on a different computer than normal for this call because I already told you guys my other computer, the keyboard didn't work, and I noticed that I was on I've got 4 internet modems in my house. That's how important internet is to me. And I noticed I was on one of the slower ones, so I thought I'm just going to change to the faster internet for the computer, and it cut me off the call. Well, I had this first impulse to oh, I didn't do anything. That's why I got back on and said, that was my fault. I would not have done something. I would not have said 30 years ago, that's my fault. I would have I don't know what happened, technology, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's it. We don't like that bright light on us. We feels like if we if we make a mistake, if we have a flaw, if we yell at our kids, if we mess up the internet thing during an interview, oh no, I'm terrible, I'm bad, I'm gonna get rejected. But the opposite is true. Like I said, when I went to that 12-step group and I'm sharing stuff that I'd never told anybody, and they're just going, thanks for sharing. And when I start doing my work through men's groups, and I tell men, get in a group, get in a group, get in a group. And, I did the majority of my nice guy early recovery work, wrote the book while I was in a men's group. 6 years ago, I got married again, and I'm in Mexico. I'm kind of isolated culturally. I'm not fluent in Spanish, even though I speak Spanish all to my wife. I felt isolated, and I was leading a men's workshop, and I just made the reference. I got to find a men's group, and one of the guys in the workshop said, "Oh, I'm in this really great program, and it's led by a devotee of David Data." And I go, "I'm in," and so I've been in that program for 5 years now, and it too has, I believe, helped my marriage survive. I've, economically, financially, I've taken off in the last 5 years. Everything in my life has gotten better in the last 5 years because I'm in a group. Now, as I said, I'm a therapist. That's my training. So, my training is you sit with somebody one on one and listen to their stories for 50 minutes, and then you go, okay. And I tell you what, you get 2 men in a room just sitting, talking one to one. We're going to spend most of the time in our heads, just talking about the idea of things, concepts. But you put a man in a group with 7 other guys with good leadership, and all of a sudden it gets real. Our behaviors show up, our patterns show up, our defense mechanisms show up, our social inadequacies show up, our inability to resolve things show up. Everything shows up, and it can be worked on. And so I love that you guys promote doing this work with other men, whether it's doing our deep work of cleaning out our stuff from our past, doing our shadow work, our sexual shame, or whether it's more of a coaching approach of where am I stuck? What do I need to do to move forward? How do I need to build resources? How do I need to build accountability? How do I need to stop the things that aren't serving me? Well, it doesn't matter what approach we're taking. Doing that in a group is just so much more powerful than any other way we're going to do it.
Yeah. I think that using like the Awaken Man, we use men's work as a vehicle to actually improve business, and we have like work energy, like family, work energy and love, and watching the guys do the men's work and then they're reporting back about their businesses flourishing, and we've not. We do one business call a week, and it's an amazing call. Pete runs it, and but we can't cover all of the stuff that needs to, the know-how stuff. We don't teach them loads. We just get them to leverage what they already know. And and there's a particular resonance with the king, like Rod Boothroyd or the Robert Moore book, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. It's like when guys operate like kings in their own life and they celebrate one another and they be celebrated and they show up like kings, all of a sudden they just like it's from the book, it's like they sit at their own throne and they start behaving like a king in their own life instead of someone who's a bystander in their own life. And this affects them so positively across all of their arenas. It is amazing to watch. I truly, to my core, believe that men's work is one of the best ways to help men excel in business.
I'll amen that. I wrote a class, an online class, 20 years ago, and it was actually commissioned by my publisher to support No More Mr. Nice Guy when it came out. They wanted me to write a book and teach it at an online university. It was Barnes and Noble University, and Barnes and Noble, I don't know if they even sell books anymore. I think they filed bankruptcy not long ago. But so they had me write this course, and I wrote a course, and they wanted it based on No More Mr. Nice Guy. And the course I wrote is 8 lessons, and it's nice guys don't finish last, they rot in middle management. The basic premise is nice guys are good at being good, but not great at being great, for many reasons. And I go over those various ones in the course, whether it's our codependency, getting caught up in toxic fused relationships, not risking, underselling, undervaluing ourselves, fear, anxiety. I mean, all the stuff that goes into it. And so I wrote that course 20 years ago and have been teaching it online ever since. And since then, I've written half a dozen other courses that I teach online. Well, in the last year, I just redid all my courses and put them in a video format where I learned to shoot video. And that was kind of like a microcosm of what I teach. I started out not having really a clue of how to do it. So I'm just, recording on my computer cam, reading, the outline script on my computer, talking into a blue, whatever mic. And it was good. I mean, and for the first class that I did. By the time I got to the 4th class, which is the nice guys don't finish last, I wrote middle management. By then I have a teleprompter now, lighting, 2 mics with 2 different recording sources, 2 digital cameras, one in here, one over here to the side, writing good scripts, reading them off teleprompter, shooting with 2 cameras, writing production notes for my assistant for B-roll, for graphics, for lower thirds, him producing them beautifully, me reviewing, and all of a sudden, I went from not having a clue how to do a teleprompter, use a scrolling iPad, and all that scared me. And, I didn't know what, and so I just watched hours of YouTube videos of how to pick the right camera, how to use the teleprompter, how to create compelling videos. And I just leaned into facing that fear. And so even just learning to create those videos was such a big challenge for me. I'm 66 years old. A lot of guys are like either retired or thinking about retiring. I'm thinking about, I want to learn a new challenge. I want to master. I want to be the king of that. And so after I finished converting this course, Nice Guys Don't Finish Last, I stumbled onto an event in an email that I got a few months back about a video series on Alzheimer's. And they did this thing where you sign up and you come watch it. They had 12 videos and I signed up. It was free. You could watch them all. They, offered that you could buy them. Really high quality stuff, well done. And I thought, I want to do something. I want to do an event like that. So I did this just last week with this course. In fact, it wrapped up yesterday. Yesterday was the 8th day of 8 videos. Had over 1,100 people sign up for it. I experimented with affiliate marketing. My assistant created all kinds of great stuff to go with it. Great technology for capturing. And, the emails I've been getting from people just about how even just having to watch a class a day in 24 hours until the next one drops. And, having to, it's like a fire hose. But the response I'm getting unsolicited is, Robert, this information's great. It's challenging me. I'm getting out of my comfort zone. I'm having, so I thought, well, I think I'll launch like a 60-day, 8-week, 60-day challenge to where, these guys they're going to come meet in small groups and challenge. And these guys are paying me $1,000 to sign up to do this thing with me. And it's challenging me. It's out of my comfort zone. So I think this kind of thing's contagious. When you get men in a context where someone else takes a risk, someone else gets out of their comfort zone, somebody else tries a new technology, somebody else, really dives into their side hustle, and you see other guys do it, and you go, if he can do it, I can do it. One of my mantras is, what one man can do, another man can do. I stole that from a cheesy movie called The Edge, but I love that mantra. What one man can do, another man can do. So yes, you put men in groups. Let them watch somebody else challenge themselves. Not necessarily even have, huge successes. That helps, but just the act of doing what scares them encourages other men to step up. And especially if you're encouraging mastery, saying that, listen, if you're going to do this, do it right. Bring your A game. Don't just play around with it. Like I said, when I was creating these videos, I went from not knowing what I was doing to, getting a lot of feedback from graphic, you know, people that create videos say, Robert, this is good. This is high quality. And,
Yeah.
and it's because I decided if I'm going to do it, I'm going to get masterful at it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
When you were talking now, I'm thinking, Bob's got a better setup than us.
Now all of a sudden you're going,
Yeah.
I can do that. We can do that. See, that's the thing. When men get like that, we go, I can
I
do
can
something
do it.
like that.
I
I,
can do it.
Why
I,
have we got 2 cameras?
Hey,
yeah.
Robert,
Well, one of my mantras is, steal from the best and make it your own, and then give them
Absolutely.
credit.
I can see Pete's face like listening to that, and he's like literally logging every piece of kit that we get. Like we're gonna have an Amazon wish list that's going to be at the
Yeah.
end of the call. But and honestly, in true form, like that is exactly I think what happens when you get a group of guys together. You've hit a nail on the head. It's that competitive. But you use a term actually, and I'm going to invite you to talk about it in a bit more detail afterwards. But it's like I don't know if it's like even it's an anti-nice guy thing, but it's like we get told that competition isn't good, and like I think some guys go through this phase of like they've been ultra competitive in their life and then they have to blunt that competitiveness. And actually, when we've been in the group, and Pete can probably share a bit more on this as well, is like guys competing, but instead of competing against, competing with someone, and it pushes them to huge feats of brilliance. And Pete, you might want to share on this as well, but we've seen guys competing in such a powerful way to where everyone spirals up, right?
Yeah, before I do, I want to just bring it back to the basics because I spotted this a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about archetypes. And honestly, a year ago, what the fuck's an archetype? This was me. Honestly,
there you
I
go.
had no idea. But Ben's talking to me about the magician and the warrior, and I'm like, dude, you've been studying this for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? I've just been in business, just doing my thing over there. I have no fucking
I want to be the jester. Can I do that?
Yeah, I'm like, what are you on about? So I think what the listeners would find beneficial now
Yeah.
is how would you define and how would you spot a nice guy?
You want me to answer that?
Yeah. Because it's like we've thrown the term around a bit now, like nice guy. The book name was the nice guy, but actually, like, how would you define that? Like, what would if you say nice guy? What are they doing?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, let's kind of back up a little bit. That's usually the first question interviewers ask me. So Robert, what is a nice guy, and what's wrong with that? So basically, my kind of elevator definition, quick pitch of a nice guy is a guy who's internalized a belief, an emotional belief. He's not okay just as he is, not good enough just as he is. So out of that come 2 things. One is a nice guy or a nice girl believes I have to become what I think other people want me to be liked, loved, get my needs met, and be successful. And I have to hide anything about me that might get a negative reaction from anybody. That's why most guys want to do this work alone. I don't want anybody to see me. So nice guys, it's just being a nice guy is just one of many adaptions, survival mechanisms of having been born a helpless, dependent, needy child with imperfect caregivers, which that's all of us. Every human being is born totally dependent and totally needy. And we stay that way for a number of years. Humans are the slowest maturing animal of any species. Used to be, took about 16 years for a man to mature. Now it takes about 35 for a man to mature. Okay, mom, dad, I'm ready to leave now. So what happens is when we're born, the prefrontal cortex part of our brain is still getting wired up and doesn't finish in men until about age 25. But the part of our brain down on the primitive brainstem down here called the amygdala, that's fully wired. That controls our fight, flight, freeze mechanism. It controls respiration, heartbeat. It's what keeps us alive. That's online when we're born. And the theory is it also internalizes emotional experiences, emotional belief. So when a baby is hungry and nobody feeds him, when he's cold and nobody wraps him up, when he's got a stomach ache and nobody can soothe him, when he has any kind of pain, if he's just left alone, hungry, tired, dirty diaper, parents are fighting, he's abused, he's shamed, shaken, anything. The child emotionally internalizes, I'm the cause of that. I'm bad. And it's not thoughts, it's not words, it's not even picture memory, it's emotional memory. Something's wrong with me. And again, I'm putting words to it, but words don't really define it. It's the gut feeling, the emotional feeling.
Mm.
Now, for every child with this very immature, underdeveloped brain, tries to survive. Every animal does. Every animal, all the way down to the most primitive reptiles that don't have much of a brain. Everything's about survival. So we, as children, babies, we develop survival mechanisms, and they usually play two roles. One is to try to comfort, soothe, make us feel better right now as we feel bad. The other is to try to prevent those same things from happening in the future that cause the painful events. Now, again, because we don't have an accurate cause and effect, we think we caused it. Babies are narcissistic by nature, the center of their universe. We think we caused it. We don't think it, but emotionally, it's internalized. I'm bad. I caused that. So what happens for nice guys is, well, if I cause that, I can remedy, I can fix it, I can prevent it, I can make it better. Now, again, every child develops these survival mechanisms. How do I not feel bad right now? How do I prevent bad feelings in the future? But every child, based on usually temperament, birth order, other things, develop in different manners. Nice guy is just one way to do it. Oppositionally defiant might be another. Aggressive might be another. Perfectionist might be another. Just give up might be another. Every baby does it differently because we're babies. So the nice guy grows up, comes into childhood. This gets really magnified in adolescence when we want to start succeeding, being noticed, get love, get laid. And how do we do that? Well, I'll do that by being nice. I'll listen to the girls talk. I'll be different than the jerks. I won't be too aggressive. I'll be easygoing. I won't be conflictual. I won't be like dad. I won't be. And so we take this path and that gets solidified in adolescence and we carry it into adulthood. And that becomes our roadmap, our paradigm. And it boils down to, in No More Mr. Nice Guy, I talk about covert contracts. But so it boils down to 3 covert contracts for the nice guy. First is, if I'm a good guy, I will be liked and loved. And the people I desire to have sex with will desire to have sex with me. And that's where you see a lot of frustration and resentment for a lot of young men come in. Not just young men. I'm a good guy. I treat women well. I'm not a jerk. They complain about jerks. I'm not a jerk. I listen to them talk about the jerks, but they don't want to be my girlfriend. They don't want to have sex with me. So that's covert contract number 1. If I'm a good guy, people will like me and love me, and I'll get laid. Covert contract number 2 is, if I meet your needs without you having to ask, then you'll meet my needs without me having to ask. Now, all the covert contracts are ineffective and don't work. This one really is ineffective. Hey, I read your mind and gave you stuff I thought you would like, and then you'd appreciate me. Why don't you read my mind and give to me? Oh, I won't let you because I'm a terrible receiver, because it makes me feel guilty to receive anything. But I'll still feel resentful when you don't give back. And then I'll just keep trying harder, giving more to you, hoping that you'll appreciate me and give back. Covert contract number 3 is, if I do everything right, then I will have a smooth, problem-free life. And this is kind of the Peter Panish aspect of nice guy syndrome. I'm doing everything right. I'm not a bad guy. I don't hurt people, blah, 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 blah. Everything should work. My wife should never get mad at me. I shouldn't get audited by the IRS. I shouldn't get laid off. My business shouldn't fail. I'm a nice guy. Everything should work out okay. So, if men are listening to this, if you have that pattern of trying to become what you think other people want you to be, so that they'll like you, love you, you'll get a promotion, get a sale. If you're hiding things about you, your mistakes, your flaws, your insecurities, anything, and if you're operating by those covert contracts of trying to be good so you'll be liked and loved, giving to others so they'll give back, and trying to do everything right, being that perfectionist so that life will go smooth, odds are you develop that paradigm, that survival mechanism of being, quote, nice to deal with your earliest painful life experiences. And again, most of the stuff we can't think our way through because it's recorded at such an emotional level. How we usually work with it is we notice where it's showing up. I'm not getting laid. All right, that's where it's showing up. I'm not living up to my potential at work. That's where it's showing up. I'm getting caught up in procrastination and deceptive productivity. That's where it shows up. Well, I get caught up in codependent relationships where I'm always fixing people and putting fires out. That's where it shows up. So you watch to where it shows up, and then you go, what story is this telling? And then that's when we usually, if you don't have to dig too deep usually to find out where there's probably covert contracts wrapped up in that story.
I think there's a lot of people who listen to this are going to be feeling pretty triggered right now.
Just punch in the face. I know, I've just been punched in the face.
I've just been sitting, just reviewing playing back some of the tape between me and my partner over the last couple of months, and I'm like, "Oh, there's work to be done here."
There always is,
Yeah,
There's always, it's
Yeah.
funny because No More Mr. Nice Guy, when it came out, like I said 20 years ago, the publisher had a lot of control of a lot of stuff, even down to the title, which I wouldn't budge on, the cover, and then for the Audible version of it. And I said, I want to read the book, and I sent them a little CD, with me, reading part of it, and they hired a professional voice instead to read the book. And I kept getting emails from people over the years that, Robert, how come you didn't read the book? He mispronounces covert contracts. He calls them covered contracts in the book. And so after about 15 years, the contract for the Audible version had long expired, and it was only available in North America, which I never understood. So I told my agent, I said, listen, let's end that contract. I want a new contract. I want worldwide availability for the Audible version, and I want to read it. And they said, okay. And so I got an email from my agent a couple weeks later from the people that had the contract, the company that had the contract for the recorded book. And they said, okay, end of this year, contract will end. And about 2 weeks later, I got an email from my agent. They said, the same company that had the contract that just ended it made an offer, and we suggest you consider taking their offer. So I'm reading the email. So I got out of this old contract. The new proposal was, Robert, and it was a letter from the vice president of the company. He said, we've only done this one other time where we redid the book. You are synonymous, with the book, No More Mr. Nice. We want you to read it. We want to keep you on board. We're going to offer you a $75,000 advance, $5,000 to come to New York and read it, and blah, blah, and worldwide distribution. I said, yeah, okay, I'll sign that contract. So I went back to New York, coming on 5 years ago now. And, I'm reading the book, and it was really a great experience. Number one, I'm reading, I'm getting tears in my eyes as I read stories of guys I worked with, right? As I saw their successes, their challenges, and how I'd forgotten these stories. But the funniest part about it all was I'm reading it going, oh, I still do that. Oh, I've slipped back into doing that. Oh my! I'm like I say in the book, nice guys are slow learners, quick forgetters. I go, yeah, I'm doing that again. And so this stuff, because it is so wired into our deepest emotional brain, it's in our nervous system. I don't know that we'll ever just like clean it completely out. It'll always show up in various ways, and in different contexts present new challenges. But the good news is, once you really come to understand your own nice guy patterns, why they're there, how they manifest, you notice them quickly, you move through them quickly, you don't go down the rabbit hole. And for most nice guys, usually how most of our nice guy patterns show up is through doing nothing, kind of hiding out, not bringing our A game, not showing up. They show up in other ways as well, but that's usually for nice guys. It usually shows up in some form of underachievement, not living up to our full potential.
Oof, that's a real powerful statement. I think a lot of guys are going to resonate with that. Is that it's easier just to hold back and not be in the arena and be challenged and fail, rather than get in the arena, try and be, the person that they don't want to be. I think that's we see a lot of guys holding back, withdrawing, withholding, all that sort of stuff. And he's like, hey, just take it to market, see what the market want with their business or their course, and let the market verify if it works or not. Not hold back yourself. They hate rejection. They hate
we can't decide that. Every successful businessman or every venture or every I discovered Mexico 20 something years ago. I thought, I want to live here. And so, about 10 years, got divorced, became single, got involved in business. I want to live here. I want to live here. And it's like, I didn't know what it would take, how it would happen, but it wasn't until I just made a hard decision, like around 2007, 2008, the recession hit, then my father died, then my brother died. Then I thought, I got to go. I don't know how it's going to work. So I let go of my lease on my apartment, let go of my lease on my office, said I'm going, pointed myself in that direction. And once I started going, doors started opening for me that I never could have seen. until I started the action. That's one thing that we do is we go, okay, I got to plan all of this out. I got to be prepared for everything. I have to know everything. I started creating these video classes. I didn't know anything. Now I think I'm actually pretty good at it, right? But it took a year. But I actually had to just start doing it and struggling and bumping into stuff and doors opening and trying new things. So same thing moving to Mexico. When I decided I'm going to move, let go of my lease on my apartment, let go of the lease on my office, and then all of a sudden, my apartment manager says, well, Robert, you're coming back in 3 months. Because I was. It's just kind of going to go 3 months, come back to the Seattle area. She said, we're going to have a studio apartment open up in the building about the time you come back. You want me to just hold your deposit and reserve that for you when you get back? I go, yeah, I'll take it. And when I let go of my office with all my furniture and everything, a colleague of mine said, Robert, I've been wanting to get back to doing groups again. And I hear you're leaving. Can I take over the lease on your office? I go, yeah, you want to keep all the furniture and sublease it back to me when I come back in the summer a couple nights a week? And he goes, yeah. So I got my old office back with all the furnishings, paying a fraction of what I was paying on the lease to use my office to come back a couple nights a week in the summers while I was in Seattle for the summers for 6 months. Doors just opened that I couldn't see until I started moving in that direction. And I promise you, to take that kind of risk, most of us need a support system. And we'll go back to our basic premise that we've been talking about. We need a group of men who are challenging themselves in similar ways. And it doesn't matter if it's business, relationship, single guys learning how to talk to women. We need that. And so I want to share a piece that was really helpful for me in understanding the work of men's group. As I said, I've been in a men's group for years. I led them for years when I was in private practice. I was leading 5 men's groups a week. I believe in it, and I know the effectiveness of it. But it wasn't until about 2 years ago in the men's program I'm in with a coach named John Wineland, who just published a book called From the Core, and it's all about men's work. So good book. Check it out. And he references me a couple times, so that's good. So I'm in this men's program with John. We have these periodic calls, and John has worked with David Data. They're close for years. And so David has come on calls with us a couple of times and answered questions. And we had one call that was just about men's work, where guys in my program could ask David Data anything about men's work. And he said something that in all the years I've been involved in men's work, I'd never really thought of. And it was such a clear breakdown. And I think this is good to remember, for those who are leading men's work. He said, guys will come to a men's program, a men's group. They'll come in general for one of 3 reasons, or they'll come to any individual session for one of these 3 reasons. And he said, one is that they're hurting. They're in pain, and they come for support. They come to be held. So this is the guy going through a divorce. This is the guy that, has had a big setback of some sort. This is even the guy that, never had sex. And he goes, I'm hurting. I want to find out how to get women to want to be with me. So they come looking to be held, to be nurtured, to be cared for, because they're in a rough spot. So men will come to a program or a group because they're hurting. They'll come to be challenged. And there's probably a lot of what you guys see in the program you do. We know we're not living up to our full potential. We know we have so much in us. We know we can soar. We know we can shine, but our fears get in the way. Our ADD gets in the way. Our self-limiting beliefs get in the way. Everything gets in the way. So we need accountability. We need structure. We need to say, here's where I'm going. Here's my plan for getting there. And guys, call me out when I deviate from the plan, when I fall back into old patterns. We need accountability. We need to have our feet held to the fire. We men need that, especially in our earliest years of life. And then Data said a third reason men come to men's programs, men's groups, is just to be with men. That's me. I'm at a stage of life. I have accountability. I have several this morning, doing this call with you guys, I'm not in my morning's writers group on Zoom that I'm in every morning. And it was painful actually to say, yes, I would do this call at the time I'm usually in Zoom writing. I'm religious. I've been doing this program for 5 years, right? I made a commitment in my men's program 5 years ago to write 10 books in 10 years. And I like a lot of guys, I wasn't meeting that. And my coach said, can you start your day 90 minutes every day writing? I go, I can do that. And I've been doing that for 5 years. So that's turned into about 3 to 4 hours first thing every day, is working on writing projects. So I've got a writer's accountability group. I have an exercise accountability group where we check in every day on Signal. I've got just an accountability group with 6 other conscious men that we meet every other week. We'll meet this afternoon, actually, my time. So I need the accountability. It keeps me going in relationship, work, career, but mainly I just need to be. I need to be with men. Being on a call with you two conscious guys, that's a great way to start my day. So usually I'm on a call with other guys writing, other conscious men. And we don't even talk. We're just on Zoom doing our writing, doing our work.
Oh wow! So
And
that's just a
and I've got 3 or 4 other Zoom groups that I do a week. I'm in a men's program where we do a few workshops a year. I lead my own workshops for men. I gotta be with men. My wife sees that. She goes, "Do you think it's time you go spend some time alone, just on your own, or you think it's time you go spend some time with your guys?" She can see it. She knows that I need that time. And if I tell her anytime, oh yeah, I got a call today with my best friend is John. I call him Juan de Google because he works for Google. To separate him from John, my coach, who's John the trainador, which is coach or trainer. And so, I got a call with Tom Cruise today, which is Gregory, or I got a call with Brad Pitt today, which is Juan de Google as well. I got a call with Gran Hero today. That's my friend Evan, who's a farmer. And she's always said, "Tell him Ola for me. Tell him hi for me." She's met many of the men. This will be my 4th year to have a writer's retreat in my house in December. She meets all these guys that come down. It's usually 5, 6 guys. She knows them. I do workshops in my home. She sees the men come into our home and they tell her, "Oh, Lupita, your husband's amazing. He's great." My wife loves seeing men have great respect for her husband. Right?
yeah.
And I tell you what, I just gotta be with men. There's just, if I'm not, I go downhill quickly. So
Mm.
Yeah.
the men in your programs and men listening to this, all right, maybe you need held right now. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe you're hurting. Go find men. I say masculine is a source of love. We usually go looking for women to give us love and nurturing. No, the feminine is about demand. The masculine is about intention and action. You need something done. You want to be loved on. Go be with men. So if you want to be held, find a men's group. If you need accountability, find a men's group. If you just need to be with the masculine energy of connectedness and love and just straightforward, corny humor, go be with men. Because all my buddies hear me say regularly whenever we're all hanging out in groups and workshops, I always say all the time, I love hanging out with men. I just love hanging out with men. You can say anything, you can do anything, you can be direct as hell to your brother. You don't have to walk on eggshells that he might get his feelings hurt. You don't have to figure out if he's happy. Did I do something right? Did I do something wrong? Do I got to do something different? Fuck, you just get to show up and be you.
Wow.
All right, I'll stop with that.
No,
I just love doing men's work and being in men's work.
I think the insight for me, Robert, from you sharing is like you've spent so much time in these groups, and actually what you said there at the end, you just can be yourself. You can be who you are and just be as like. Because when you first started explaining the Mr. Nice Guy, is like you're not okay as you are, and actually what I can see from what you just shared is like the amount of time you just spent being who you are around men and getting love, respect, celebration for being that man has been the remedy, been the tonic, the medicine to help you integrate and be the man that you want to be, not the nice guy. And I can see that now. And like, that's why, just I want to make sure we do have a discussion around this is that we wanted to give that more of a stage. Because going back to the original share is like when guys see men's work from the outside, it doesn't really compute. You're going to get all that stuff you've just shared. It doesn't make sense. You're going to get all that stuff. And it doesn't make sense that it would make you super successful. So we wanted to create a better platform in the UK because a lot of the things that you mentioned were in the States, and actually I think like there is a small men's movement in the UK. I found some really, really great people when I was looking for it, but equally I found that there was a lot of stuff that I didn't resonate with that was brought into these groups. It was just like the spaces or the conversations, and I wanted to create one specifically around business success, performance, guys in business with business specific problems, or that like the middle management guys trying to become the C-suite guys. And I was like said to Pete, and we were talking about, it's like we would never have been able to find a space. So we wanted to create an event where guys could come in, find out about you. We actually had really, really some great luck with getting some great psychotherapists to come and work with the group this year. There's also a man who's really, really well known in the marketing space who's agreed to partner with us, and he's got a phenomenal following. But he sees in his life in the marketing world, people are trying to solve personal issues with marketing issues and business. Like, and me and Pete talked about this. Is that in the past sometimes we've seen guys sign up for business programs when they've actually got personal issues, and so what they do is another business program. I'll sign up for another business program. I'll make some more money, then I'll be happy. And then they do that, and they're like, "Holy shit, I'm still not happy." And it's because they haven't actually gone and solved the problem, which is, a lot of the problems that you were sharing about their relationship, about themselves, about how they see themselves. And we just wanted to create a platform to bring men together for a weekend in the UK and give them the opportunity to learn more about the value of men's work. So, yeah.
And we've had conversations about this, and I'm excited. I'm excited that you guys are pulling this thing off, with making it your impossible goal. And by the way, I borrowed that from you guys. I'm a big fan of stealing from the best. And the program that I'm launching, out of that event I told you I just ran, is after I talked to you the other day, I thought, 60-day impossible goal. I like that. That's a great platform to build on for this challenge that I'm going to do. So thank you guys for that, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely our pleasure. So just to talk about the event quickly, we actually haven't come up with a name yet, but we just, like, as Robert talked about earlier, just started and got straight into action. We're like, right, we want to do this event. It's going to be in January. We picked a date, 28th/29th of January 2023, and we just started every day doing one little thing going towards it, and we're getting better and better and better at planning this event. We've got some fantastic speakers lined up, including Robert. We're now looking at these amazing venues. We've got loads of people talking to us. And so get that in your diaries now, if you haven't already. 28th, 29th of January, 2023, London, outskirts of London. That's where it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's on my calendar, guys.
Yeah, Robert's flying over from the States to come and be with us. And that in itself just speaks to, like, the quality of if you listen to the podcast today, the quality and the depth that we've gone after for the speakers is phenomenal. But equally, just like getting around other men in a room, we're going to get a big room. And we're going to really, really just do our best to create an environment where guys get to connect with one another, experience stuff together. So it's not just going to be your typical sit there TEDx style, nod your head, think this is interesting. There's going to be some experiential work as well. And just if you've been thinking of doing that, it's probably a very low bar to. It's not joining a men's group. It's not committing to going on your own to a smaller group of guys. It's a big event, so you can have some level of anonymity as well. And my perception is that that's going to help a lot of you guys who are listening and thought, do you know what, actually, I'm interested in this men's work thing. I feel safer going to a bigger group and a bigger thing where there's more likely to be people that don't know each other than stepping into quite an intimate men's group. And that's what I found, because like when I walked through the door of my first men's group that wasn't a course, I knew that they met on a regular basis. I did feel really quite worried, because I was like, these guys really know each other. And like part of the reason I think that having the big event is going to help is that you can definitely know that there's going to be a lot of people that don't know each other at that event, and then coming together in that single cause, which is being a great man, being successful in your marriage, being successful in your job, and being the best version of yourself you can be. And I think that's just quite a powerful common goal, right?
Mm.
I'll say something, because it's funny that we have to pitch to men. Come to this event. You'll be, kind of anonymous. Nobody will know you. You don't have to commit to anything. Isn't that funny that that's the pitch that we give to men? But let me say this too. I'm fortunate that, I get invited to different events to speak. And I mean, number one, I'm flattered, and I enjoy the speaking and the sharing of ideas. But I tell you what I enjoy the most about coming and doing men's events is that I get to meet the men. And like a lot of times they're in a big hotel, and you're in these meeting spaces, and there's a lobby outside with all the book things and all that. And I usually sit out in the lobby in between all the sessions. I just sit out there, and most attendees usually figure out who I am pretty quick, because I'm on the schedule, the roster. I've already spoken, and I just sit out there and I just watch the guys, and guys come and talk to me. And so I connect. I like doing that. I like being with men. But what I watch at these kind of conferences, that are big and kind of anonymous. There's usually groups of 2 or 3 guys that often show up who do know each other. They've all, hey, let's go do this thing. They know each other. But I noticed that men start clicking and connecting because we got to eat. So often, you have meals in either the hotel restaurant or you go as big groups out there, and you got to sit next to somebody while you're eating, and somebody on the other side of you. And before this thing's over, people, right? And you've made connections, and you're going to follow up on some of them, and maybe you found resources you didn't know existed. And a really good friend of mine now, I met him at a conference I did in Florida 3 or 4 years ago. And he's a psychologist in Denver, Colorado, and he was speaking on the program. And we just happened to go out and eat a couple of times. And I've been in his home. He's met my wife. We talk every couple months or so. We became good friends just because we met at a conference, right? So yes, do come to this. If you kind of need to, blend into the crowd, not be noticed, great. Come on. And if you need the connection with other men, with conscious men, with men that want to be good men and who want to live up to their full potential, man, I can't think of a better way to go do it.
Yeah, oh god, yeah, because it is funny because guys like what you're saying there actually. I went to a conference to speak last week. And it was actually for ladies, but watching like how I showed up actually was really interesting because I naturally retreat. I don't like you. Don't naturally come forward and start conversations in places I don't know very well. But actually, by the end of the day and the weekend, I felt like I had some really significant conversations with people on it, and a really long lasting relationship. So the question I wanted to answer is that guys who are thinking of coming to this event, like when they see people like Robert speak, and we've got Dan joining us, and we've got on the list a psychotherapist who's going to be joining us as well. Is what can they actually expect to get out of that event? Like, what can you expect to get from coming to be around other men? Is that a lot of the things that we're going to be sharing are going to be things that are going to exponentially help you in your relationship, in your business, in your parenting, and actually just being a guy day to day. And some of the endeavors, like as Robert shared before, actually acknowledging that there are groups, support groups, men's groups, performance groups that you can access, and actually they'll be there to see in plain sight because you'll see so many men, even from the Awakened Man project, as we were there on the weekend. And that's why I feel it's so important because we haven't got that event in the UK. There is one event similar in the UK, but we don't really have one in the UK.
Yeah. I'm thrilled you guys are doing this. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And here's the beautiful thing is you guys know of launching anything like this. You go into it not knowing a lot, being scared, having questions. You do it once, you go, oh, okay, that worked. That worked. Okay, we could have done that a little differently. We could have done that better. Oh, now next year, let's try this. And like, once you've anything, whether it's walking up and talking to a girl for the first time or launching your first men's event, is you don't know what's going to happen until you do it, and then after you do it, you go, "Oh, that was scary, but let's do it again." Like getting on a roller coaster. That was scary. Let's do it again. And yeah, I know. I haven't even thought about what I'm going to talk about yet when I'm there. I actually love doing Q&A. I love just being there, letting people ask because I find out what's going on in people's lives. What do they most need? And so I just love being up in front of the crowd and just being able to get to meet their deepest needs, and use. I'm a relationship guy. That's my training. That's my experience. But I'm also a businessman, and I haven't gotten a paycheck since 1988. So I was an entrepreneur before anybody used the word entrepreneur. I was a digital nomad before anybody used the term digital nomad, and so I love talking business as well. So whatever direction this goes, I know there's just going to be so much great information and just so much energy. Yeah, I tell you what, the guys that are there, they will be so energized. They'll go out in public, maybe with them and a few other guys, and people will actually ask you, "Who are you guys? What are you about?" Because there will be such an energy about you from challenging yourself and being with other men who are challenging themselves as well. I promise you, that's going to happen.
Yeah. Like we've spoken before, Robert, and you've come and spoken to the guys before, and like this conversation highlighted something for me earlier, and I'm still thinking about. I can't get it out of my head, and it's when you talk about the nice guy, and how actually that comes back down to parenthood and the way you were brought up and as a baby. And I've got well, Leo's 20 months old, and I'm like, shit, like, you know, and I am very aware that the way I act around Leo is, that's going in his brain, that's going in his emotions, but actually my nice guy tendencies. And I was thinking, do you know, so I'm going to share something now that I did this morning, and I felt bad afterwards. So we're walking out the door to go to take Leo to nursery, and he threw a little tantrum, right? He got angry and he hit the dog's kennel door, and it slammed the door, and where Thor was in it. And I told Leo off because I was enraged that he'd just done this, so I told Leo off. And afterwards, when I was sat in the car, I was thinking, all Leo was trying to do was just express his anger. Right, he got angry for a second. He was trying to express it, and then I've told him off for expressing that. And then what did I do for a bloody long time in my life, and still do now, was I suppressed my anger and suppressed my emotions.
Because you were taught to.
Because I was taught to by my parents, right, and society, right. And I'm thinking, I thought about it in the car, and then when you said that earlier on, I thought, God, this is such an important thing for me as a father, right? Just being aware, just being aware of these sorts of and just goes back to how important being in these sorts of groups are and having these sorts of conversations are, because you get that awareness. You're like, do you know what? I'm now aware of that.
Yeah.
Next time that happens, I might act a little bit differently.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, my background is marriage and family therapy. So in the past, I worked with a lot of parents, and I told every parent, you're going to fuck your kids up. What we all do. I mean, society fucks kids up. Parents fuck kids up. Your kid's going to get fucked up. They're going to need therapy someday. They're going to need coaching someday. But I would tell the parents, the real issue is not how you fuck your kid up. The real issue is how you recover from it. And you recovered from it. That's the real issue. You lost it. Your child was just asserting his desire. You were asserting your desire. You realize, oh, wait a minute. I need to do that more artfully. I need to do that more masterfully. And you'll do that differently next time. And that's what it's all about. But again, if we're hiding all of this stuff from the world, if we're not talking about it, if we're not letting anybody know about it, we're going to tend to just keep perpetuating the same thing over and over again. And again, that's why I joined a men's program again 5 years ago. I was not having really pretty interactions with my wife. They were going south. And, we both loved each other, but I thought, this is not going in a good direction. I need to be around other people where I can talk about what's happening and get better tools. So again, we're all flawed, imperfect human beings, flawed, imperfect husbands, boyfriends, lovers, fathers, business people. That's okay. Are we willing to keep challenging ourselves and growing and recovering? That's the real question.
Yeah.
And again, we'll be the broken record here. We need other men to help us do this. We need other conscious, growing men to do this work.
Yeah, just shameless plug here. Guys, listen to the podcast. Please do us a favor and rate and review us wherever you are, because we're trying to grow this podcast and your reviews absolutely help. We also have a crazy interview with Robert that we did a while ago in our Facebook group. It is the most watched interview in the Facebook group, and there are lots of trainings in there. There's lots of videos in there on men's work. So search the Awaken Man Project on Facebook and you'll find it. Join it. You can watch that.
Yeah, thank you.
Shameless plugs. They're the best kind.
Yeah, that Pete, have you practiced that? That's so polished.
Just off the cuff.
It just came through you, bro.
So natural.
It's like infomercial style. Dude, yeah, but honestly, Robert, you trumped us. Like your video in session you did with the Awaken Man group. Guys watch it and they message us saying, "Wow, blew my mind." The stuff you shared on love and dominance, things you said about being part of a men's group and why it's important. Like it literally did help so many men. So I'm really grateful for that. And just the fact you've committed to coming over and being part of this event. Guys, like Pete said, review the podcast, but also share this with another man, because this is the way that we're going to share this message. Don't be selfish. Don't keep this goal to yourself. I'm sure what you've listened to, if it's affected you as much as I've enjoyed listening to it today, please share it with another man, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to spread the word of how much men's work is needed for so many men in this current climate. And come to the event. You're going to hear, if you join the Facebook group, you'll hear about it. If you follow us, we'll tell you about it. We'll be pushing out information about it. And Robert's going to be there, and we're going to have some incredible world-class speakers alongside him. So come and join us. Robert, I want to thank you so much for the investment of time, energy you've put into today's session. And it's been an absolute pleasure once again to have your company.
Thank you. And thank you for the invitation. And man, I'm looking forward to London.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Pete.
Right, and team, insights on the Dr. Robert Glover podcast. Ben, let's get into this one, mate. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, that was a great episode. I really, first and foremost, I couldn't believe that he came on the podcast. Like, I remember like getting in touch with him, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll come on your podcast," because we were growing this, men's movement podcast, and like, just the first insight for me, it was just how he showed up when we first started recording. And he had this guy. So Robert is 60 plus years old, maybe.
He's mid-60s.
Yeah, right. And he came on, everything prepped. He has 4 routers in case it goes down. He's moving and shaking with his tech. And like, I just remember seeing, I was like, oh my God, this guy is like, he's phenomenal. He was really, as a guy, he was really inspirational. And the second thing I noticed as well is that he was just like so easy to talk to, like super duper easy. And even we had some tech issues at the start of the call, which was like, but it's all super calm. But that was the biggest, the first insight I had when we got on the call with him. Because like, I'd read his book. I was like, this guy's in my world, this guy, I know I referenced him as like the Alex Ferguson of men's work. He was, I was like, oh my God, but I think he was our first big guest.
He was our first big guest, and he was and still is. He's just a phenomenal guest. We've had him on since. We talked on stage with him, and being just like Ben said there, the guy has life force. Like he has, like you can feel the aura of the guy. And what I noticed about that episode now, like re-listening to it, and he said that he started men's work when he was in his mid-30s. Just like, we started men's work kind of early 30s, and now Robert is, his mid-60s. So he's been doing this for 30 odd years, 30 plus years. He's been doing the work for, but you can see like his commitment to his own personal development, and like how easy he is to talk to, how smooth the podcast went, his life force when you see him in person. That is down to his commitment of doing the work, doing his self-development.
Yeah, and I just wanted to like remind y'all, if you've not read No More Mr. Nice Guy, it's the foundational book of men's work. So like we talked about this on, I think we've nearly every podcast recently we've mentioned this, is when you give someone a book and it's a book that changes their life, you never forget the person that told you to read that book. And I remember it was actually Craig, who's been on the podcast earlier on, is like, it gave me that book. He's like, oh, you need to read that book. And I remember reading it thinking, I'm not a nice guy, I'm not all these things. And I now looking back, that episode was 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years in October.
2 years ago, literally thousands of downloads later, I look back and I'm like, it's still the most popular episode on Awaken Man podcast. And I look back and like how far I've come since then, but also how far I've come since I first read his book. I've read his book 3 times, and every time I've read the book, I've seen something different about what's currently going on in my relationship. Because I went from being single, being from like newly divorced to in a relationship where I'm, was like learning and going through the work, to now married. I'm probably going to read it again because now I'm married, and like there's a whole host of new things that's going to come up. So there's something about like, that not fearing the guy that's done 1,000 kicks, one kick 1,000 times instead of 1,000 kicks once. It's like rereading that book has been such a staple for me I wouldn't say like a proper nice guy recovery, because I think when you speak to a lot of guys, they're like, I'm a proper nice guy. I'm a proper nice guy. I'm afraid of conflict. He talks about himself. He's like, I'm a nice guy. I'm afraid of conflict. I'm nice to people. I'm grateful. I was half in, half out on that one.
Yeah. Talking about evolution, listening back to that podcast, I didn't bash guys in the woods drumming bashing their drums and doing yoga and selling their arseholes, but I did allude to bashing them. And now, what do I find myself? I mean, I'm not in the woods bashing my drum or selling my arsehole, but I am doing yoga. And actually, like, witnessing that evolution of myself over the last 2 years, being super in the warrior, go, drive, direction, action, fucking hard as nails, chest up, to now actually leaning into, I fucking love the yoga. I love the polarity of doing jujitsu and then going and doing yoga after the same day, and it's really evolved me as a man. And just witnessing that in myself, and now I recommend it to guys. When I see guys who are, I'm like, fucking hell, you and me 2 years ago. You need to. I'm sorry to say this, mate, but you have to soften up a little bit and do something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone, so you can stop being this like hard-faced man.
Yeah, well, I think that was we did that interview, and you were still just about leaving your company.
Yeah.
I think you were just going through that. You just come into Awaken Man full time, and yeah, I can see the difference in you looking back. Like, and if I'd have said to you, dude, like, let's do some yoga. The thing is, you being you'd probably gone, yeah, I'm actually open to do it. I'll go and do it. But there's a difference between, yeah, I'll go and do it just to serve, go and doing it, versus I want to go and do this. I actually see it as part of my identity. I actually see it as a part of my growth as a guy. And he actually says this, and he goes, "Oh, if you're going to go and do it as you work in a men's group, you're going to do it as you're going to go to a jiu-jitsu group, you're going to start doing yoga, whatever you choose." What I think was really important is that actually you can do it all, and I think this is what I think that this is what so many. Well, I definitely had myself, is that I thought men's work had to be done sat in a circle with a group of men in a Pilates studio, and I was like, "Oh, this is my idea of men's work." And what Awaken Man created is this ability to do it in such a different way. Doing it in cool hotels in Greece, doing it in like London in nice places, coming to Dubai and doing skydiving. That's all men's work. And like all that stuff is men's work, because it's spending time with guys. It's spending time with guys who are on the same wavelength as you. And that's the medicine. And I'm thinking that, there was I was actually kind of a bit not annoyed at myself, but I was more like, I need a group. And me and Pete have talked about this. I need a group in Dubai. I say the word need. I don't often use the word need frivolously. I want to be in I need a group of men in Dubai. And I think that was a big thing that he was really like selling in that podcast, is like, guys, listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. Guys need guys. And like, as you listen back to the episode, it's like multiple times in the episode, guys get around guys, guys get around guys. And guess what happened when I went home over the summer? All the guys who haven't been around guys have been struggling emotionally.
Yeah.
Massively, because they are disconnected from guys, and that's all I saw all the way through the summer.
Yeah. Well, he says that men are looking for something. Men are searching, even if they don't realize consciously that they're searching and they're looking for something. They are, and most guys will then end up in some form of group. It could be a yogi space, could be a jiu-jitsu club, could be a MMA club, could be a men's group. It can be, and most guys will end up there. It might not be the right space for them to be in. Might have to navigate that and evolve and find some different groups. But men are searching, and we do fucking belong in tribes.
Yeah, actually, it was even just connecting with one of the guys, and like, he actually called me out the other week, and he just said, "Oh, well, if you've got a gift that you're not sharing with the world, I think you're a bit of a see you next Tuesday." And I was like, "Oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear." And I think you don't get that kind of direct love in anywhere other than probably a proper men's group where you've got conscious men. And I think that was a big distinction you kept on coming back to as well. And I'd see your point there, Pete. There's a difference between a group of men and a group of conscious men. And I love my mates. I love my mates. We spend great time together over the summer. We got together. But I don't know about you, and maybe you want to talk to this as well, is that when I'm with a group of men who that are not conscious, that don't like talking about deep things, that don't like really opening up, and so I'm like, there's a conversation that we're not having here. I'm standing in a room like there's a conversation that's not being had here. And whereas I get on a call with you, or I speak to the, especially with, it's like, oh, we have that. We'll say the things that need to be said, and we talk about the things that need to be talked about. That makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, fucking absolutely. I was out with 12 guys about a month ago. And some of these guys were new into being in a kind of a group of conscious men. There was probably half the group that were very new to this. The guy was sat next to me, and he was talking about he's got twins, young twins, and he was talking about like how the last 2 years have been so hard. It's been such a chore looking after them. It was all like it was all down. And he said, you've got a boy, you know what I mean? And I was like, dude, do you mind if I challenge you here? And he was like, yeah, sure. I don't think anyone had ever asked him that. And the guy's opposite, who's in this world, he was like, be in a group like this, get used to guys saying that to you. And I challenged him on what he was saying. And I was like, I think you need to change your story there. Like about you having two beautiful twins that like you are blessed, yet you're talking about it like it's the hardest and worst thing in your life. That is reframe the story here, man.
Yeah.
And he was like, fuck. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
And the other guy was like, get used to that, be in a group like this and get used to being challenged on your narratives that probably aren't serving you.
Yeah, I think that you don't get that unless you're in a proper group of a closed group to a certain degree of men. And that's like in the workplace, you wouldn't get that. It's almost now, and this is what I'm seeing. Is like I'm speaking to a client yesterday actually, and it's like he wants to say that in a group in work, but he's so worried about the legalities of how you can speak to people. Works in the States, and he's like, I'm afraid of what would happen if I spoke to someone like that in the States. And so I actually we did an episode on radical candor, and I was like, read Radical Candor. It's like that is a definite way to speak to people in the workplace. But like I think that this is something I've realized since is that love for men is challenge. Like that is actually like really giving a shit about a mate or a buddy is not just pacifying him when he's struggling. It's like it's saying to him, like, listen, man, I think the way you're seeing this is a bunch of bullshit. You need to look at it differently. And actually, when you receive that from another guy, I don't think you ever go, yeah, fuck you. You know, it's always like, oh yeah, do you know what? Thanks for holding that mirror for me.
I'm going to share here. I had this yesterday. Not receiving this from another guy, receiving this from a woman. So yesterday I went and I met someone. We dated for a little bit, and we ended things. We just, do you know what? This isn't right. Let's we ended things. And I met up with her yesterday. Like we're staying friends, and we had an amazing conversation. And we're having a great conversation. And she said to me, Pete, do you mind if I share something with you that I think could be valuable?
I bet you were like, oh, here we go.
First thought was, oh, here we go. Then second thought was, actually, let fucking breathe. Let me lean into this. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm open to you sharing it.
Wincing on the inside.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. There was a little bit of like, fucking, I have no idea what she's going to say to me. She's a super conscious woman. I really, really respect her. Super high level, very, very intellectual, very emotionally connected. And she shared something with me, and I was like, do you know what? I super appreciate you saying that. Thank you. There would have been a time,
I thought you were going to tell us what it was.
No, I'm not going to say what it is. No, I think it's a little bit too much. Yeah.
Was it like, what was it? Was it a big hit?
Oh, do you know? I will tell you what it was. It wasn't a big hit. She was said the way that you're, because I was like, look, I'm being honest. I'm processing some stuff to do with my previous relationship. I want to be neutral going into a new relationship. I actually don't feel like I'm neutral right now. This is why we stop things. I was like, I don't feel like I'm neutral right now. I've still got some work to do. It's unfair on you for me to give you a commitment that's void.
Yeah.
Right. And she really respected that. And she said, I like the way she goes, my thing for you is the way that you are processing things. You're kind of looking at it like a typical guy. What's the quickest way that you can fix this? What's the 3-step method to fix this? And she was like, I just think you should just find a modality and really stick with that modality and just do the work and just continue with that.
Mate, thank you for sharing that. Holding it back, you motherfucker. That's strong, man. That's strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, but 2 years ago, I would not have received that. I would have been fucking guard up. No, I know, right? You know, what do you know? But actually doing a lot of this, the work that we're doing as developing as guys, I can hold that space when a female is provide. Ultimately, she was holding me to a higher standard, right? And rather than me seeing that as fuck off, or like why are you trying to knock me down, or whatever that looks like, I was able to hold that, receive it, and go, yeah, do you know what? Great advice.
Yeah, I think that Robert talked about that in the episode. He's like this. You are in the I can't remember what he said about instant gratification world where you're like a boy and you're like, you know, hang around, we're looking, seeking women's attention. And I think that that's probably, like, looking back years, if I'd have got that kind of feedback, I would have been so wounded by that. I would have been like a hissy fit little boy that didn't want to hear it. And it makes you realize how far, and I think, you know, we would talk about the podcast before, like we've grown up substantially by going out and having these conversations with the likes of Robert, Gillian Sharecki, Conscious Uncoupling,
Catherine Woodward Thomas.
Like we've gone out, we've sought really high level advice from the best in the world, and it's actually like it's accelerated the rate of what's the word for it? It's like initiation, really, isn't it? It's like becoming, you know, going from a boy to a man. And I think even over the summer, I got some great friends across the whole spectrum of ages, like from, you know, 25-year-old all the way to 65. I got a great network of different age guys that I speak to. And even like older guys that I was like, oh, I can sit there and I'm like, oh, that's quite a boy-like behavior going on there. You know, I see it, and I can see various like, oh, that's quite, and lots of guys haven't done that work where they can receive something like that
because it's hard.
Yeah.
That's part and parcel of being a mature masculine man, is working on your unconscious triggers and your unconscious deep-rooted, sometimes trauma, and actually work and doing the work around that rather than being naive and ignoring it.
I got a story actually. It's just like, one of the things that I've really had to work on, and I'm very consciously working on it, is my mum's pattern in me to leave things. Like she's a leaver, and she like leave things, like doesn't like admin, financial admin. Like I didn't get my dad's. I was like really annoyed, and I was like watching my dad one day, and I was like, why didn't I get your traits of being like super organized around things? Like if a bill comes through, it's paid yesterday. You know, like that's my dad. And my mum would like leave things. And then so we were going through the airport on the way back from Dubai, from the UK to Dubai, landed in Dubai. I left the iPad on the plane. And it was just what it was like. I normally do a sweep search. I'm very like diligent normally, but just on this occasion, the iPad's still in the pocket. I can see it on fire my freaking iPad. It's going around Dubai airport at the moment, and they can't find it. Yeah, okay. Anyway, Poppy made a pot shot comment, and she said, "Oh, yeah, another time where you've been disorganized and you've cost us money." And I was like, oh my God, it was late, you know, it's 10 o'clock at night. And I spat my dummy out and I said, oh yeah, you're just so fucking mean. Why are you always so mean? You just like, why are you mean? And what she'd done is she'd pushed a really big trigger for me. I wasn't like proper, like spit my dummy out, be really horrible. I was like, that really hurt. And that 2 years ago would have been a long time that I'd have sat in that pain. And yeah, interesting, because like when I think as you become more conscious as a guy, you can deal with that kind of stuff way better. And do you know what I realize now? It's just an area for me to grow up.
Yes.
You know, and the thing is, I've been actively working on this as well. Been really, really good. And it was just because, and I think it hurt more because I've been working on it and she pushed on it.
Yeah.
So
one thing Robert talked about, and I have to admit, when he talked about that in that episode, I glazed over it and didn't understand it. But he said that sex and shame is a real portal to our deepest work. And he said that, and he said it like twice, like in the same sort of sentence sort of thing. And when I really listened to it, I was like, now I'm starting to understand a little bit more about that. And now I've heard others who I really respect in the industry, like John Wineland, for example, has also talked about that. And that's like, and I have to admit, that's one that I am delving. It's one that I've started to delve into this year and just fucking explore what that even means around sex and shame. And that's where our deepest work is.
Yeah. I heard the other day, I think it's for depth, you need closeness. So like if you want to be deep, if you want to be a deep person that's got you can hold a lot, you've got to be able to create closeness. Like closeness or proximity creates depth. And I was like, that is so interesting, because when you are in shame, it's the last thing you want to do is get close and intimate with someone. Physically, like when Poppy and I, when we're not on par together, the last thing I want to do is be close with that person. And if you think about sex is the ultimate, like technically it is, but actually I don't know if it was on one of the ones that we did, or I was on or listened to something, but one of the behaviors that shows a lack of like being comfortable with your partners, you have sex. The moment you have sex, you both come, both have an orgasm, and then you go split apart, and then you go on your phones.
Yeah. Wow.
And I was like, oh, and like hands up, I definitely can see moments of that. I was like, oh my God. And I can't remember who it was who said that, but that was something I definitely want to explore deeper, because like that is definitely something that I can see that as a shade in relationships I've talked about with other people and my own. And I was like, yeah, and I think it is a shame thing. It's like a protection thing.
Yeah, I hadn't.
Yeah, like you have this ultimate moment of closeness, and then you want to split apart.
Yeah, well, I was with a guy last week in person, and we spoke about this.
That was the wrong time to say I was with a guy.
Yeah. We both came.
Mid-jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
No. So talking about his relationship, and he said that because we were talking about sex, talking about relationships, and I was like, "Tell me about your sex life. I want what's going on," and that actually came about, and I was like, "Dude, that the time like after you've had sex, don't don't let it be this like one and done, and then you both gel off and go somewhere else. Like, have that as a full experience, and really be in that moment. And particularly afterwards, that is the time for really deep and meaningful conversations. That's because you're both so open and you've both been just so intimate. That is the time for really deep and intimate conversation.
Yeah. That's and actually I heard that. I heard that in that conversation. There you go. It's like Pete's I've been speaking to a blurry Pete on the camera team. So if you're listening in,
Fuck, it doesn't look blurry my side.
someone told me the other day, there's like, oh yeah, it takes a long time editing the podcast. I'm like, don't edit it then, just put it out raw like we do. It's like,
Yeah.
gosh, man. So the closeness side, and I realized that when we went and talked to Constance, so Pete and I did a breathwork session in Dubai when Pete came over, and she said, oh, that I've got this sexual consciousness workshop. I think it was Nick Warner that was delivering it. Is that correct?
I don't know whether Nick was delivering it or someone else.
She mentioned something. She mentioned and someone she knew, and I think that's what actually happens with guys is that you work on yourself. Like, I think this is like, the guys listening in, we think that, oh, we'll work on the sex and then I'll feel better and then I can work on the relationship. And it's a kind of bullshit way of thinking about it, really. It's like, oh yeah, we'll just get the sex right, have a bit more sex, and then I'll feel better, so I'll treat her better. And actually, even like that's the kind of nice guy pattern, if you think about that, is like, oh, I'll be super nice, so I get more sex, so I'll feel better, and the relationship will be better. That is a kind of a nice guy, what's the word? Algorithm. When
it's kind of one of the covert contracts.
Yeah. Whereas actually, looking back, it's no, I will work on myself. I will get myself right. I won't worship sex. I will lead in the relationship. I will be the giver of love instead of wanting it all the time. I will lead like the man, and I will naturally fill my own cup up around other men. So I am left being wanted. And that's the first step. And when you've achieved that, that's when your sex life will change. That's when you'll see significant change. And I think that is the biggest shift in the thinking that I had, since that podcast that we did with Robert.
Yeah. And Robert, so he talks about covert contracts. So the 3 covert contracts. What's number 1? I'll be liked and loved if I'm a good guy.
Yeah,
Women will want to have sex with me if I'm a good guy.
Yeah. So I think I ran that same program. I was so afraid. I think that's what stopped me from having conflict in my business relationships, my staff, with my partners. I was so afraid of being in conflict. That's how that manifested for me. I was just afraid of conflict. I didn't want to have conflict. I struggled with it. I just wanted to be nice, and I just wanted to. And then that's what I thought would get me liked.
Yeah, and this goes back to boundaries: is that you should have boundaries. You can say no.
Yeah, I think I've just been like over the last 2 years. I've just got saying I'm not okay with that. That's kind of that's what I don't know if I'm okay with that. Like, Pete knows me really well. If there's something I've got on my mind, like even before the podcast, I'll say it. I'm like, this is what's going on for me. And I think that's where, previous to all of this work, I would not have said that. I would have just ruminated on it and have probably talked to someone else who had no. I would probably have talked to Poppy about the same problem I was just talking to you about directly. And Poppy's not going to, she's probably going to fuel it, give her opinion on it or give a different opinion on it. And actually, that's something I've noticed in my personal leadership. It's like, if I've got a problem, instead of ruminating about it, I go to someone, I'm not happy about this, and I resolve it way quicker than in the past where I've just hold it in.
Yeah, and think about it, overthink about it, overanalyze it, come up with 16 different scenarios in your head.
Well, Pete, you got that
just
before.
having the conversation with the source.
It's like, I actually just had said to people before, I was like, am I overthinking this? And you're like, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so covert contract number 2, if I meet your needs without me asking, then you'll meet mine without me asking.
Yeah.
Read my mind and then give me something in return.
Yeah, I think, like, honestly, this is like where I'm at in my relationship at the moment. Like in a good way, and like working through this. We've just got married. I think that when we got married and when we, like, afterwards, like when Poppy and I got married, afterwards, Poppy had a real down. Like, she was just like lost, because that was her North Star in the sky for such a long time. And we were at home, and not ashamed to say this, it was a hard time. We'd come back and that someone wrecked our house, and we'd like, the summer was tough for all different reasons. And there were, like, my sexual needs were just not prioritized at all by myself or by her. There was like, and I was like, there's still needs. And I was like, this is what I was navigating. I was like, well, actually, that was the covert contract. It's like, in my head, it was like, no, you should want to have sex with me. And it was actually resolved. And we were talking one day, and she's like, and she said, like, we wrote down our goals, like what we want to happen, and then one of the things that she wrote down is like, I want Ben more. And that, even just seeing that for me was like, that's a really positive thing. And that was really, because, like, I think especially when it comes to needs, is like, when do you sit down with your partner and say, these are my needs? Like, have you done it since? Like, actually, this is a good question. Since that, and like, as you've been dating, have you talked about your needs more with people?
Yes.
Like, how do you do it? Go on, how do you? Because I think a lot of guys listening were like, how did you even have that conversation while dating?
Oh, it's such a fun conversation to have. It just as simply as, like, have you ever thought about, like, your wants and needs in a relationship, and then they'll respond, and like, and then it just stems from there. So, oh, cool. Like, what does that look like? I'm super interested. And something, like, I've had this, that sometimes it's like, with a woman, they're like, yeah, this. Other times it's some things, and then go, oh, I'd actually like to leave some to be discovered during a dating process. I'm like, hey, absolutely cool. But I am finding the more, and my, like, wants and needs they absolutely evolve. Like, I discover things about myself whilst getting into relationships and dating, and or even when I'm on my own, I'm like, oh, that's really fucking important to me. Now I kind of like add that to my list, so to speak. But like, talking about it, and not just like once, actively, frequently talking about it.
Yeah, it's
as a conversation, not a direction. Hey, this is what I fucking need. It's like, no, that's between us. Like, how can we cultivate this relationship by both understanding our wants and needs?
Yeah, I don't think I'm doing enough of that at the moment. Like, that, this is like just talk about it now. This is a real.
But that's literally, if I meet your needs without me asking, then you'll meet, because then that's like, well, I told you once, like a year ago. Why have you not remembered?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like, why am I not your biggest priority? Yeah, it's like, it's quite funny because we were talking about this on the way to, as I drove Poppy to meet Rach, Pete and I's friend, and we were talking about needs on the way, and like, actually, do you know what? And I was like, should we get a massage table? Because, like, we both like massage. We actually get couples massage. People come around to the house, and what's amazing in Dubai, for around £60, you can get a massage, a couples massage, and it's fucking great. It's a really good massage. Two people come around the house, beds, everything like that. Amazing, £60, which is really, really good. And I was like, should we get a massage table? Because she was like, oh, I've got this problem with my neck, and like, should I go to a physio? Should I go to a chiropractor? I was like, yeah, you can go to all of them, but also, why don't I just like give you a proper massage? And I was like, hang on a second, do you reckon we get a massage table? Because one of my needs is physical touch, like, and like, this is somewhere where you can start with this, guys. If you're listening to this as well, is love languages. And 2 different guys I spoke to over the summer, one of the biggest fuck ups they were making was they just were missing their partner's love language. And so, like, yes, absolutely have that conversation and assert your needs. One of the things that you actually need to make sure that your partner understands is how you give and receive love. And for me, it's physical. Mine's physical touch, and it's quality. Oh, it's not quality time. It's more words of affirmation. Like, that means a lot to me. Words of affirmation and physical touch. And I remember, like, talking to different guys over the summer. They're like, yeah, but she says I don't love her, but I do all these other things for her.
I
Like,
buy her flowers. I buy her handbags.
Yeah,
I'm not
like,
give a
no,
shit about that.
she just wants this, this
Wants
other
quality
thing.
time.
Yeah. So if you actually just go into Google and write in the 5 love languages assessment, it's an easy win for you guys as well.
Yeah, because I know mine. I tell women, I'm like, by the way, and it's a great conversation. It's like, have you done the love language test? Yes or no, and then we can talk about it. Oh, here's mine, by the way, just so you know. You do this for me, I'm put you in your hands.
Yeah, steak and a blowjob.
Yeah,
That's it. That's my love language.
It is service.
Yeah, no, that's quite funny. But seriously, I think that that was a big insight for me about, and I think this is what's been nice about the podcast as well. It's like I'm still working through a lot of these stuff. Like I said at the start of this this kind of conversation today, I was like, every time I read that book, there's a different bit I'm at. I'm always like, oh, there's another level to this. Go on then. What's the covert contract number 3?
Number 3, if I do everything right, then I'll have a smooth, problem-free life.
Oh my God.
Right? If I don't hurt people, my wife won't get mad, my business won't fail, right? My friends will always like me.
Oh my God, man. I don't even know where to start with this one. It's actually I'm very good at this one. That's not one I ascribe to right now. Might be in the future. I did actually think about it the other day. I was like, oh my God, I thought I was doing everything right here. And it's like, and I'm still getting this issue. But I think this is kind of the perfectionist tendency of guys. It's like, all right, if I get the six pack abs, if I've got the big job, if I've got all the things right, my life's going to be happy forever. And then there's this big pit, and like they're missing something. And
yeah, or like having that belief, but then when the inevitable challenge comes, the punch in the gut, the wife's pissed off, or the sales don't come in that month for the business, or you get fired, then it's like it's fucking the world's over.
Yeah.
If you have that belief that because you're doing everything right, then the world should be swimmingly. And it's not.
And actually, this does link very nicely to one of the things I heard again is like, you're going to fuck up your kids. He's like, no matter what, you're going to fuck up your kids. And actually, this is on that point. So Brené Brown famously said, if you are a perfect parent, you fuck up your kids. And here's why. They don't get to learn to deal with chaos. And like, my upbringing was chaos, like all sorts of things happened. And like, as I do more and more deep work, I learn more and more conversations with my mum, more conversation with my dad. I learn just more and more about my past. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm always like, wow, there was so much for me to deal with as a growing boy. And I, as an adult, I'm very, very good at dealing with life. Like, I'm very, very good at that. I'm very good at navigating hard conversations, difficult situations, emotional things. I'm good. I'm very solid. And it's because I had imperfect parents. They were amazing parents. They were absolutely did their absolute best, and there was chaos. And actually, that's what made me a really, really, really like good at dealing with chaos. And he said this, and I heard it differently, maybe because where I'm at with parenting and the girls are a bit more articulate now, is that I give my kids so much of a different upbringing to what I had. And it was quite funny hearing it. It's like, you're going to fuck up your kids. And I was like, oh no. I was like, no matter what. But I sat with a buddy at home, and his biggest wound is that he won't be as great as his dad. That's his wound. His dad was the perfect dad, amazing dad. And for him to live up to that is just insurmountable.
So even then, so his
Dad
dad
of the year.
his dad fucked him up by being perfect.
By being a great dad. And like,
Yeah.
that's his wound. And it's just the way he sees it. Like, honestly, if like this guy he's a great dad, everything that he could have done, he's done. And the wound that his son has is, I'm not going to be as good as my dad. And like that for me, I was like sitting there listening to it. I was like, holy shit. And that, when Robert said that on the podcast, it instantly made me think of that. And it instantly made me think of my parenting. It's like, I'm just not going to go for perfect. I'm just going to go for fantastic dad. I just want to be a great dad, and I'm going to make mistakes. And like that was just that really brought that home for me.
Yeah. I've got something written down here that towards the end of the podcast, this came out, and life has its way of working itself out. Take risks or don't take risks. It's a workout, but the difference is whether it works out to a logical scale, a 10x scale, or not. And I liked that. That wasn't Robert's words, but it was like just he was alluding to these things that life does have it has its way of working itself out, but it is entirely up to you whether you take the ballsy route, the logical route, the route B, the riskier route, or whether you don't.
Yeah, but he also said about nice guys are great at being great at being average, but not great at being great.
Yes.
And I think that's what the real thing for me was. Like, I don't want to be an average leader. I want to be exceptional. It's always been what I've prided myself on. I want to be an exceptional leader. I really want to be known for being exceptional. I don't want to be average, and that's not a shame-based fear of being average. Like, oh, being average is not enough. I'm like, nope. I just want to be recognized by myself and by other people as exceptional. And actually, if you've got those 3 nice guy traits, those covert contracts going on, you haven't done your work. You're going to be average because there's so many things that you won't be able to deal with.
Yeah, and just as we talked about earlier on in the pod about guys looking for something, searching for something, and needing to be in a group, a tribe, like one of the biggest bits of advice that I can give in joining a group is that sometimes there can be a fear of, well, all the guys in that group, they all know each other. They're all brothers already, and I'm going to come in as an outsider and not know anyone. That is, I can tell you, it's a bunch of rubbish. Because all the guys in the group, they all started by not being in the group, and they've joined one by one by one by one.
I actually disagree, unless it's properly led.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
I think I've been to CrossFit gyms, and I'm like, there's a click here because it's run by people.
I'm specifically talking about the Awakened Man.
Yeah. Oh, like the best. Yeah, that is like an instant. You're in, and it's like you're in. But what I'm talking about with a lot of guys going to groups is that they don't have the conscious leadership or the leadership at all. And a part of a leader's role is to get people to easily come into the group. That's what, it's sovereign energy. It's like the king is like, he's all about bringing relationships together. And I think that's when you go into a group and it's not properly led, you will experience that. So I think you need to check in. Like, if you've been going to a group and you feel like you've been an outsider for a while, you need to think yourself like, actually, how is this being led? It's the leader's role to help you find an easy path into the group. Like that, like how many hours did we put into working out the best way to bring guys into the group and like onboard them, the experience? It's like
still now there's like, even recently, I must have probably spent 10 hours in the last month improving that process.
Yeah, and that's so important. I think that's I think that's what he said in the podcast, is that when you're looking for a group, you're ideally looking not just for any group, you're looking for a group of conscious men. And I think it's really difficult as a guy to understand what that is until you're in it and really going, is this how they all talk? Oh my God, this is like, because I think that if you were to put a Hot Seat Thursday call live onto Facebook and people heard what was going on in that room, they would be like, what the fuck It's just like, that's what, but it's true, isn't it? Like, what goes on in those calls, you're like, oh my God, did that actually really just happen? Like, is that what just got talked about? And then, there's times where we had guys and have guys, is that guys would just come on and say, listen, and they just all of a sudden start crying and like just talk about how hard things are. The guys would just like literally, there'd be like 15, 20 guys sat on the call, just waiting for a guy to just clear his shit out. And there's sometimes you're going to get a peak saying, step it up. But there's other times where, because these guys don't get super triggered and worried and, unsure themselves when a guy's going through his shit, he's allowed to process it. And I think that was and this is something we talked about with Robert, is that over the last 2 years, especially in Awaken Man, the amount of direct strategic coaching that went on was minimal. I don't know what's going on now, at the same time, it's like, but compared to other programs you've probably been in, Pete, the amount of strategic work is not, it's not like it's there, but it's not as much as perhaps like a real paint by numbers course. However, I reckon the ascension of the man is exponentially bigger.
Yeah, absolutely, because we work on the self.
Yeah, because and this is something I'm actually where I'm at in my career at the moment. Like, really, I was like, do you need the strategy or the paint by numbers, or do you just need to become a much, much better leader of yourself and the people around you? And it's
all about the who.
Yeah, like who you're being. And there was a big movement in the coaching world about being, and I don't know if people just jumped on it because of Steve Hardison and he was a big player in the coaching world. But what I think is like a big shift is that what happens in a group like that is you become a massively different man to who you were. Like, I think a lot of guys come into men's work and they're a shadow of themselves. They are living, like you've said it many times, they're living at a level 5 when they know that they've got a level 10 in there. And that work is the work to get them to a level 10.
Yeah. It was. I had a guy come on a couple of weeks ago, new into the program, and I pretty forcefully, to be fucking honest, got him to share something because I knew he needed it off his chest, and I forced him out of it in front of all the guys. It was ballsy on my behalf, but I kind of knew that it was going to help him. And fuck, you could see the guy's shoulders drop. And he said after he shared in front of all the guys, I'm probably being judged quite a lot now. And I was like, men, be fucking honest right now. Everyone put your hand up. Who is judging this man? No one.
Zero. Yeah.
And I was like, dude, that's a story you're telling yourself. It's a bullshit story you're telling yourself. Because I tell you, when you get into a room like this, people aren't fucking judging you. They're not. They're not the way that they think they are. That there's compassion and there's empathy here.
Yeah, right? Well, remember when Robert in the podcast said that he went to a sex addicts. Yes, it's like, and I like how he just brushed. I was like, whoa, there's some really hardcore shit going on there. And like he said about his stuff, and then they went, "Thank you for sharing, Robert." And I was like, "Oh my god, that made me laugh." I was like, it's quite funny. I was like trying to find a parking space, and I was like laughing, and this guy looked at me as if like, "What are you doing?" And I was listening to the podcast in my car. But that's the thing, is like time and time again, is that you'll share this like deep, dark, horrible secret you think that's really bad, that no one like. And it's the same with us on the podcast. On this podcast, is like when I told you before, I was like, I thought you're gonna give us what actually got told, and you're like, oh god, that hurts. Oh my god, could that be a problem? And it's even me sharing stuff about my relationship with Poppy. But when I've shared it, I'm like, oh yeah, do you know what? It's helpful.
Yeah. It's in fact that actually when the guy shared that, another guy on the call who was also new was like, "Hey man, just gone through the same thing, fucking the same thing." I was like, dude, what the fucking? You think that's coincidence?
Yeah, it's what's interesting is we believe our problems are special.
Yeah, you're not unique.
No, some of them can be quite niche. I'm not gonna lie. There's been niche problems like, wow, that's a real niche problem, but they're all the same. They're all the same sort of shades, and that is what is. I like what Robert is doing. Like Robert is. So if you haven't listened to the podcast, listen to it again. If you haven't read
Noble Mr. Nice Guy is a foundational book for a man listening to this podcast. So if you're a big fan of Awaken Man, go and listen to that book. Go and read the book. Robert actually reads the book now. It's pivotal, and it's like the thing. I think what was really good is that when you read the book, you then need a group to do the work. And I think, Pete, I think you definitely signpost where the best place for guys who've either listened to this podcast and they want to do the Noble Mr. Nice Guy work on themselves, or they want to do the men's work on themselves. Where would they go after this?
They go to the Awakened Man. They will go to heroicman.com. They'll go to the Awakened Man Project Instagram page. It resonates. Reach out. Right, guys. Good insights. We're going to do some more of these where we give insights on some of the most popular podcasts. So tune in for the next. Speak to you soon.